And you're good to go.
Okay, excellent. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Safety and Security Committee meeting. It's April 8th at 8:30 a.m. We do have a quorum, so I guess we're ready to get started. I'll start with just, opening remarks as I do every meeting. I think it's important just to say that the goals of the committee are to promote, of course, safety and security in the district, as well as to enhance the transparency communication with the Weston community. Look, I hope everyone is finding these meetings useful. Please feel free to anyone out there, either live or watching this after it's being recorded to reach out to us, offer us any feedback through email. We'll gladly take that. With that, I guess the next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. So, David, I don't know if you had a chance to review the minutes from last meeting from March. Any questions or comments on those?
I did a review, no questions or comments.
And neither do I. So they all look good to me. Motion to approve then the minutes.
I second that.
All right. I guess minutes are approved, Jody. Moving on to discussion of some safety and security topics. There are no announcements this month that I know of. So moving on to some of the specific items here. I put back on the list here this portable alert system rollout update. I know that we've had it on the agenda for the last few months, but I do just want to make sure, keep this on the radar and make sure that this is rolling out as planned and we're maintaining our schedule. So I guess, Jim, I know last month we were talking about rolling it out to the greater campus. I think we're slated to have this fully rolled out to everyone on campus by the end of April. But if you give us a quick update, that'd be great.
Sure. The remainder of the fobs have come in. IT has them, and they are going to be working on rolling them out. There's, I think, 200 and something left. It is a long, tedious process to program each one and assign them to each staff member. But Dan DeVito has a plan in place where he's going to go out into the field, go to each school, sit there and with his staff and assign them to the remaining staff members. And his timeline, we should have everything up and running by May. And then my plan is to get with Dan on our next, maybe May 18th, when there's no school, and do another alertist test with Joe and the police department. Now that we are adding more fobs to the system. So yeah, we're still on track. Our timeline still looks good for the end of April.
Awesome. And any questions from you, David, on this? I mean, it seems like we're meeting the timeline here. I don't necessarily have any questions. I guess that we're going to continue to roll these things out. We've created some policies around, at least, who gets the fobs, what happens if someone forgets the fobs, how you disengage the fobs if someone has left them at home, or if someone has been, let's say, terminated, or no longer works on the campus. I guess we're still working through sort of all those little kinks, but it sounds like we're still on track over the next month or so to get this fully rolled out. Is that right?
Yeah, just to clarify, Dan did factor in extra fobs. So our security staff at each school will have extra fobs that will be assigned to our subs that come in. So there will be a fob in every classroom. And if a staff member forgets it or loses it, those extra fobs will be issued accordingly.
Okay, great.
That'll be under the purview of the security guards.
Okay.
Just like when they, that's what they're doing now with the substitutes. They'll give them the key, they give them the folder, a Chromebook if needed. So it's just one more item for them to check out in the morning with a sub.
And
Awesome.
if there's money left in Dan's budget, we should probably get Jim a new laptop, or at least a microphone.
I made a note to have them look at that just now.
Yeah.
I said what I think Deb was thinking.
Yeah, exactly. I was going, is it my hearing or what?
He's underwater.
Sound like I'm underwater.
There was
Little
only
bit.
so long I wanted Deb to look like she was suffering before we all should join in and say, no, it's not you, Deb, it's Jim. Well, it's Jim's lap computer. So.
Okay. All right, great. Sounds like everything's going as planned. So next item here, look, is a really important one. I think if we've learned anything over the last year and a half, 2 years here, it's, you know, the communication piece to and the coordination piece to any of this is vitally important. I think, you know, to David and I especially, but to the community as well. So over the last few weeks, I'll tee this up for you, Jim. Over the last few weeks, Jim's been pretty involved in reaching out to the community. He's held 2 Meet the Director sessions / forums. I also think, Jim, you've met with the other board. So I think you've met with the police commission. I know you're in constant communication with Joe Michelli, who's been gracious enough to join us as well this morning, the captain. I'm wondering, Jim, can you give us a sort of just a recap of maybe your interactions with the community, and then what you've done sort of just beyond the community in terms of coordination? And like I said, I know you've met with the police commission and probably the police as well. So just a high level flavor of that. You know, what are your takeaways from meeting the community, things of that sort?
Sure. So we set up a evening meeting up at the middle school. Jody, it was the beginning of February. It was like 6 to 9 or 6 to 8 or something. I don't remember the date, but it was well received. You know, we had a handful of parents show up. I got to meet everyone one-on-one. No major concerns came up. They just wanted to meet me. Kind of gave them my mindset on all things school safety and security. And then we had another one at a PTO meeting, a morning session that had about 42 parents show up, and that was well received. I got up in front of everybody, gave my background, told them about myself, and then met with a good handful of parents one-on-one when they wanted to just come and talk to me. Then Dawn Egan asked me to attend the police commissioners meeting so they could put a name with a face. Again, same thing, kind of informal meet and greet, told them about my background, where I come from, what my mindsets are, what my goals and objectives are for the district. But just to be clear, every single time I opened up the floor with tell us about yourself, I did a thorough reassurance to the community that under my assessment and evaluation process over the past couple of months, Weston has a very strong foundation of all things safety and security, and that I'm here not to change anything, but to build upon the structure already in place. And the parents love that. The community loves that. You know, I reiterated the fact that we have the mile safety officer, and not a lot of people knew that that officer was assigned strictly to the campus. He wasn't just, you know, an officer on patrol just hanging around the campus. You have 3 sworn police officers on campus 5 days a week, and that is incredible. And then in conjunction with the 7 security guards that do an outstanding job, their day-to-day activities. They're very passionate, they're very serious, they take their jobs very serious, and they've been great so far. But yeah, like I said, no major concerns were brought up. The meetings went very well. The police commissioners were awesome. They were very thankful that I showed up at night to meet with them. Yeah, so it's been good so far. Everyone's welcoming me with open arms, and I'm still here.
Yeah, yes, you are. No, look, I appreciate that. I've, you know, I myself, I don't know about you, David, I've heard back from parents after those meetings, especially after the PTO, the meeting that you had in conjunction with the PTO. I've heard nothing but positive things about that. People were were very, I think, grateful for you to make the effort to come out to speak to the community. I think they were impressed with your background and sort of your, they're relieved with your sort of assessment, right? So thus far, and they were excited about, your ability, I would call it your proactive nature in terms of just, assessing what we have here and then following through on some of these items that maybe have been lingering, as well as determining what other needs we have in the district to get us from, better to best. Let's say that. So I've heard nothing but great things. I don't know, David, have you heard any feedback from any parents or anyone else with respect to Jim coming out to the community?
I haven't, but I can tell you, I think that just the communication piece from, when we met Jim, during even the interviewing process, I think one of the most important skills that Jim brings to the district is the ownership and the communication with the community, because that's really, at the end of the day, I think most people know the safety and security of their students is right up there with the education, but it was hard to communicate or have a point of communication. So I think for the purposes of, Jim, the back end work, which is, things that people don't see, but your ability to bridge between what they don't see and the communication side. I mean, to me, that's spot on for, where Jim really brings value. It's bridging what we're actually doing with what the community hears. So
Appreciate that.
yeah.
Hey, Joe, Captain Michelli, I want to bring you in just for a second here. Just from your perspective, if you can give us, first of all, thank you for your time this morning and being here. Everyone appreciates it. From your perspective, you could tell us about sort of, since Jim has started the communication there, how you guys, what your communication is like. I know that you guys are sort of, points of contact between the two, from what I understand, between, the school district and the police department. Would be helpful to understand a little bit about, how often you guys are in communication and just the partnership there.
I mean, we have a very open channel of communication between the two of us. We typically speak multiple times per week, sometimes multiple times per day. We're constantly bouncing things off of one another. It's very open channel. We're both vested in moving in the right direction as far as school security, but Jim has done a great job of taking the reins there and running with projects and getting things done, which is quite refreshing. We're just working together to make sure that where we do kind of overlap in certain areas, there's no territorial boundaries, if you will. Everything is cohesive. It's a collaborative effort. And I certainly appreciate Jim's availability and open communications and transparency. It's been a great start to kind of both of our tenures. Both started right around the same time, so it's quite refreshing to know that we're able to accomplish as much as we have in a short period of time.
No, that's great. I mean, I feel like the communication here has finally gotten to a place where, between the district and the police department too, I feel like it's frequent, it's effective. It gives, again, I think it gives people a lot of confidence. It certainly gives me a lot of confidence in sort of our security posture and stance. And I love the fact that you guys are coordinating as much as you are. So I know it takes a lot of time. I know those efforts are not easy, but I myself, and I know the community really appreciates that. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Jim, I want to kick it back to you quickly, just on the updates.
I got one quick question for Joe.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, I was on mute when I started to ask.
Okay.
My microphone works really well on mute, I've determined. Joe, quick question, and I think we brought this up with Jim, so maybe it's for both of you. For the Milo safety officer, who we know is physically present on campus, we see the crews are going up and down the school road. Is there do they do tours inside the lower schools, the middle school? Is it on, like, I'm sure there's not a regular schedule, for the purposes of security, but do they go through the buildings? Is there an expectation that they get out of the cruiser and tour the buildings twice a day, 3 times a day? Like, how does that piece work?
And there's no set number or time, but yes, we do want the officers to go into the lower schools. Our SROs also have sister schools, if you will. So they're each assigned one of the lower schools, and they pop in. When we have different drills, whether it's a fire drills, secure in place, lockdown, whatever. Not only to do the SROs, the mile of safety, but also patrol typically goes, and a lot of times you'll even see the chief and I. So we try to be consistently inconsistent, if you will. We're not on a regular pattern as far as timing and going through the individual schools at the same time every single day, because we certainly don't want to develop certain patterns and show those, if you will. But yes, the short answer is yes. The mile safety officers is supposed to be going into all the schools really throughout the day. Some days, if they're tied up with something in one of the schools, helping an SRO or doing something, they don't make it to all four. But we do want them in the schools and fist bumping the kids in the elementary school and all that cool stuff. So
yeah, and that was gonna be my follow-on question. Do they go into like the cafeteria during lunch times and stuff so that visibility where the students can see, the policeman or the policewoman, that visual optics of them knowing that there's a police personnel in the school? Like, is that part of like, will they hang out for a little while in the cafeteria or something like that?
oh yeah, they'll go all around, cafeteria, playground. It's great. The migration line, if you will, in the Hurlbut Elementary School, going from one end of the building to the other, you get a good opportunity to. I know when I used to work it, you're standing there in the hallway and high-fiving and fist bumping. All these kids walking by and they love it. They get all excited and they're into it, so it's fun. Or out on the playgrounds, along School Road by the North House. There, they'll come up to the fence. You're standing there and they'll harass us and have a good time. So it's a lot of fun. But yes, they do. We do encourage interaction with the kids. It's important.
Okay, then last question for visibility. When they're there, the cruisers are, I assume, visibly, so the community sees, the presence. I think that at one point, a couple parents asked, or the question of, when the SROs are in the schools and what's mile safety officer, the cruiser is someplace where it can be spotted, right? I assume that's part of a deterrent system.
Yes, the cruisers. If we go into Hurlbut, the cruisers park right by the front door. So we also want to keep it. We're not trying to hide them or anything. We want to keep it so, God forbid, we did have to respond quickly to another school, we can get out to the vehicle quickly and do what we have to do. So yeah, visibility is a big component of the mile safety program. So we do want them to be visible, and you'll see them on School Road doing some traffic enforcement. You'll see them parked in front of the buildings. Obviously, see them at the traffic box at the Lord's Highway intersection. But yes, we do want plenty of visibility on the campus.
Thanks.
Anything else, David? You good? Okay, let me see here. Give me one sec. Screen jumped around. Okay, so the next item here, just Jim, I wanted to kick it back to you quickly. You've been here for about 2 months now. I know you've been assessing the state of school security in the district, moving some of those, like I mentioned before, some of those projects forward. I believe last time we had talked about, you had mentioned upgrades to the existing security camera system and radios, I believe, as well. You've clearly been enhancing the partnerships, I think, with the police. You've mentioned formal security training, I believe, when I saw them in the minutes, during the summer and potentially fall. And anything else here you want to mention, sort of, again, now that you've been here for 2 months, anything else to mention in terms of assessment or what you're working on now in terms of updates or enhancing the security? Are there any topics are there any items that are top of mind for you or that you're really pushing at this point?
Sure. So one of my goals in learning the district was to build upon the systems that are already in place. And I spoke about it, I think, last month or the month before, about the Avigilon system and really tapping into the potential of that program as far as access controls and door chimes. So that's slowly, it's a budget thing. So I have to work with the vendor and get some prices and kind of roll it out, if you will. So I don't know what that timeline looks like yet. I'm still in the process of working with the vendor, and then I'll be working with Phil and talk about budget. But I just had a 2-hour meeting with Raptor System. So Raptor is our access control system that is at every school, and actually the high school has an open campus, so the students sign in and out using the Raptor system, and that tracks who comes in and who comes out of the school. Raptor offers so much more than that. And again, just like with Avigilon, we can use the system at a higher level. So if you're only using the system at 20%, we're just using a very small portion of what the system's capability is. I would like to get to the point, and I do have some pricing, to increase our subscription and purchase Raptor kiosks that can be deployed throughout the building and not just at the front door. And this would increase our access control measures as far as who's coming in and out of the schools. I'm just kind of starting that process as far as, you know, there's a lot of layers to it, with including the faculty and staff and the unions. And so just to break it down in layman's terms, for emergency management purposes, I need to know, and the police department needs to know, who is in that school if there's an emergency. What Raptor does is I can literally pull out an Excel spreadsheet, and it'll tell me at 8:59 a.m. on today how many and who's in Probar. So it's a better way to manage people in the school, and we'll be able to tell who's where and what. So it's a control factor. It's not really it's not designed to be Big Brother. It's more designed to be able to control, or not control, be able to manage who is in that school if there's an emergency. We know how many people are in the school. So I'd like to see us get to a point where on our ID cards, when we scan in and access the front door, and then when we leave, you scan out. And that would be done through the Raptor system, and I'll know who's coming and who's going. It takes kind of some of the weight off the shoulders of the security guards, because sometimes people leave out the back door of the high school or a side door, and it's just, it's cleaner. And I'd like to see us get to that point eventually. So that's kind of what I've been working on in the background, if that makes sense. Again, it's one of your systems that's already in place, and we're only using a little portion of it. And it can be used for so much more.
So Jim, just a quick follow-up. I'll open it up. I know, hey, Steve, if Steve or David have questions. So in terms of the kiosks, would those be placed at sort of every entrance/exit point in all of the schools? Is that what you're thinking?
I'm thinking the main arteries, like the main doors. You know, again, it's going to come down to cost. I know it's a simple Samsung device or an iPad device that we could purchase as a district versus purchasing it through Raptor. They have cases for them, and they're mounted on the wall right next to a door, and you simply scan your barcode that's on the back of your ID, and that's it. It's maybe a 5 to 8 second process for someone, and the kids are already doing it. The process is already in place for juniors and seniors at the high school. So the system is in place. It's just expanding on that system to faculty, staff, paras, subs. Does that make sense?
So the kids already do it in the high school?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And they're very good at it too. They come in, there's a couple, you know, like the scanners you have like at ShopRite or something. There's those sit at the front security guard desk.
Yeah.
Kids will come in and scan their ID in and out, and then the guard just hits a button on the laptop. And we know that that kid has come back from lunch or they're leaving for the day. That manages our student population at the high school level, but we can expand and build upon that so that we can do our subs, our paras, vendors. Well, vendors gets visitor passes, but the system can be expanded to also include faculty and staff. We have faculty and staff that share buildings, like they might be at Hurlbut in the morning and then up at the middle school in the afternoon. Right now, we have an antiquated 3-ring binder that sits at the security guard desk, and they're literally signing in and signing out when they come and go. Where does that paperwork go? I mean, my guards have boxes of these attendance logs. I don't know what the retention period is. Are we shredding them? How long? And there's just a lot of, it's just an antiquated system. And I'm thinking outside the box of a system that we already have, that we already use for students. Why can't we just transition that and use it for everybody?
Yeah.
It's a cleaner way to conduct business.
How does that work for, can you expand? So we got a question. I've gotten a question, Jim, about just visitors. Okay. Tell me about sort of the effectiveness of the Raptor system for visitors to school campus. And I'll expand this to maybe a little bit more of a sensitive topic. And maybe we bring in Joe as well, but for any sort of visitors that, you know, would happen to be parents that are, I don't know how to put this, maybe perceived to be in an uncomfortable sort of home situation where maybe it's known in town, maybe it's not, and maybe they're considered to be, let's say, I don't want to say a nuisance or a threat, but you know, someone who maybe is going through tough times that maybe elevates sort of, you know, let's say a domestic issue to something that's more in public. Tell me about sort of just the Raptor system from a visitor standpoint, and then how we manage some of these sort of difficult, let's say, home situations. You know, when some of those people, let's say, approach the schools. I know we're probably limited there. Again, I don't want to blow this out of proportion. I'm just curious in those different.
I can explain it to you
Yeah.
what the procedure and what the background is on the Raptor system. So
Yeah,
when
yeah.
we have a contract with Raptor, the state police sex offender registry unit sends an email list to the district if any sex offender people are mandated by court order to go on the sex offender list. Weston gets an automated email. Raptor automatically updates that. Again, beyond my IT level, but I did confirm this with Dan. It's all automated. So if we have a resident in town that is on the sex offender list from the state of Connecticut, the state police send that information to Weston. That gets put into the Raptor system automatically. So if that person tries to come to the school, the screen turn, and they skip the guard asks them, let me see your ID. They scan the ID, the screen turns red, no access. That happens on the outside of the school. They are vetted at the doorbell before they're allowed into the vestibule. Now, the next portion of access control with Raptor is if, and again, this is all hypothetical. I don't know what the criminal data looks like in Weston. If there's a bad domestic violence case, mom and dad get divorced, there's court orders in place that mom gets custody or dad gets custody, that victim is usually guided by the court. Family court will tell them, hey, you have kids in the school, give a copy of the court order to the police department. The court sends the court order to the police department. That's between the court system and the police department. The victim is then encouraged by the family court or prosecutor, take a copy of the court order, bring it to your principal at your school and show them that you have custody. Now, sometimes those custody agreements are, hey, dad's picking the kids up on a Wednesday. And then it gets a little muddy because now the principal or the assistant principal has a copy of that court order and they have to now manage that and make sure that dad's picking the kid up on Wednesday versus mom's picking the kid up on Wednesday. It gets a little, it's bad. Like, so I can speak from my background in Fairfield. We had a lot of these cases and they're not good. they're very sad for the kids. The kids are always the victim in these. And it's unfortunate, and I always took a very hard stance that my principals and my faculty and staff should not be figuring out court orders on the front steps of a school.
Right.
So when we had these cases in Fairfield, I would always have an SRO. I would send an SRO. We would do a police file and say, listen, these are the guidelines. We are not going to tolerate any domestic cases on the front steps of our school. You will be arrested. And I was pretty hard line on that. I've had conversations with Joe. I am not aware of any cases currently in Weston where we have that. So you guys are blessed that you don't have to deal with that. But again, fast forward, the Raptor system, that's where the Raptor system comes into play. So I would have Dan and myself would go take a court order, say, all right, Dad is no longer on campus. So we would then enter him into the Raptor system as no access. I then also managed a no trespass list in Fairfield. I would have our super send a letter to the house, to Dad, certified mail, stating that he is no longer allowed on campus, and that's it. But again, none of that happens without a court order from a judge, whether it's a civil court order or a criminal case court order based on a domestic violence incident. And again, those are, I'm not searching through, court documents. It's the onus is on the victim to notify us. If it's a criminal case, the court, like I said, will notify the police department. If somebody gets arrested for felony and there's kids in the school system, they're pretty good with that. And Joe can speak more to that if there's a warrant or a restraining order, protective order, the court sends that documentation to the police department, and then the dispatchers load that into their CAD system. But I don't want to, overstep my boundaries here. That's the police in me talking. If Joe wants to throw in his comment on that part of it, how that back end process looks, Joe.
I mean, that was very thorough of an answer. It's almost like you've done this before.
Yeah.
Yes. So everything we do in that regards is driven by court orders. We can't necessarily, violate somebody's civil rights and, just bar people from being places. That said, when we do have an incident of domestic violence, especially anything significant, we do a threat assessment right there on the scene. By law, guns and firearms are to be turned over. So any, firearms and ammunition, I say, are turned over to the police department, and we take that into custody. We've had multiple incidents where, we've had to come back with search warrants and seize numerous firearms related to a domestic violence case. There's also risk protection orders that go into effect. So there's you've heard them as the red flag law. There's various layers to how we can protect the public from dangerous people, potentially with firearms, and we utilize every resource available to us to ensure that somebody's not a danger to the public, especially after these incidents. If we do have something, at night or whatever have you, we reach out to the SROs. Once we bring the case to arrest or whatever conclusion it is, the SROs are made aware of what happened. And depending on the situation, that then triggers different alerts to the school where possible and legally allowed. But our SROs might say to a counselor, like, hey, might be worth checking in with little Jimmy today, see how he's doing, kind of thing, where we're not necessarily giving protected information, but it gives us the ability to triage this from all different angles and continue threat assessments and vulnerabilities as we move forward. So we do work closely with the schools. We've had people that have been arrested for certain crimes that were barred from being on campus, sometimes behavior on campus itself. And we get a letter from the superintendent that goes out to all of our patrols to make them aware that, so-and-so is not allowed on school campus. So, and again, the Raptor system is great in regards to when the names are entered into that. That gives security kind of a first line of defense there, and we're right there. So.
You know, it's good. It's good to hear about just the level of coordination that happens here. I certainly don't expect you guys to, to adjudicate cases that, where you have not been alerted by the court, or you guys are trying to make a determination sort of on the fly. Especially if someone is not, if someone's behaving properly on campus, you guys haven't been alerted. You can't. Obviously, the onus, to put the onus on you, I think is unfair. But it is also interesting to note sort of where the Raptor system comes into play here, and how important that is, and how, I guess, how important the communication and coordination between the police department and let's say Jim would be here in this case. So
Yeah, I'd just like to back up what Joe said. It's so important in my experience, aside from any threat from a parent, that the police department is connecting the dots for the mental health aspect of the kids. Because at the end of the day, the children are the victims in these horrible domestic violence cases. And just a simple, hey, by the SRO to the counselor or the psychologist or the assistant principal, hey, this kid has some trauma this weekend, and they don't even get into the case because everyone's privacy is protected. You might want to keep an eye on them. They might need some extra help. They might want to talk to someone. And period, stop, and that's it. It's connecting the dots between the police department and the schools that is it creates such a big impact. And I've seen it firsthand. The kids may be struggling, and you don't know what happens, inside the four walls of someone's home. And that's where the police department is a huge asset to notify the school that, maybe this kid, he didn't stay up all night playing video games. He just watched mom and dad get into domestic. So that piece of it is so important. That's why we have to maintain that strong partnership with the police department.
All right, that's great. I mean, I don't have any other questions. I don't know if David or Steve do, but
I just have, thank you for Jim and Joe for sharing all that. And there's another piece, obviously, is the staff piece and the staff training around recognizing, encouraging, supporting students. And the other tool, in addition to the police department and our SROs, would be DCF. And so there is a lot of staff training around one to alert if there is sort of a reasonable cause for concern. The school staff are not trained as DCF investigators or anything like that, but we are trained in terms of when to report, and then DCF decides whether it's a situation to investigate or not. But there's that other arm there I just wanted to point out.
Yes, and we as well, whenever there are children present in the home in a case of domestic violence, that's part of our mandated reporting. Police department contacts, right away, as soon as they get back and start their reports, they contact DCF on the care line, and then they file the appropriate written reports with DCF as well. So that it's a layered approach, and we're all vested in this together and looking for the best interest of all students, but especially ones that have been victimized by the circumstances, from the previous incident.
Yeah, no, again, thank you for the level of detail there from everyone. Thanks, Deb, for chiming in, on what's happening sort of on the other side of that, in terms of giving support to the children. So appreciate it. Unless there are any other questions, we'll just jump here to switch gears a little bit. Cybersecurity. I know there have been some developments on the IT security front. I think, Jim, from what I've heard, I know Dan's not here, but if you can give us a quick update, I think there are YubiKeys or something along those lines. If you can explain what that is and sort of what we're doing to enhance security on the IT side.
Yeah, so months ago, they had that, it made nationwide news. The Power School was hacked into. It didn't affect us. But Dan and his team has really stepped up their cybersecurity footprint in the district and has issued slowly issuing. They're called UB. Yeah, they're little keys. So when you, I don't know if you're familiar with these, but it's one more layer of cybersecurity. So that if someone does get your password or your login ID, now they need your fingerprint. So it just adds a layer of security. So once I log into my laptop, I'm good. But if I go somewhere else in the district and need to use someone else's computer, this UB key is going to give me access with my fingerprint to log into my district information. And again, it's according to Dan, it's going to help. Well, it does reinforce our insurance carrier for cybersecurity things. So it's a huge benefit, and each staff member is going to get one of these. That he's slowly rolling them out. Did I forget anything, Deb, on that piece?
No, I know they have been trying to give me a key, and when I'm finally in the office, I'll get one. So yeah, that's an important step. So thanks for pointing that out. That's in process.
Okay, great. Any questions from anyone? No. All right. So let's move on to the spotlight conversation this month. Look, really excited with the newly appointed acting superintendent, Deb Lowe, who of course has been gracious enough here to step into, what I would say is a somewhat difficult situation. Deb has, what I view as is a very impressive career in education. For anyone who doesn't know out there, she was the former principal of Wilton High School. She became the assistant superintendent of Wilton Public Schools. She was then named the superintendent, if I have all this correctly, Deb, of Richfield Public Schools. And then subsequent to that, she went back to Wilton, served on the board of ed, and then became chair. So just a wealth of experience at high performing school districts. And now, we get to benefit from her talents for the next few months. So Deb, appreciate you, first of all, joining us in Weston. Secondly, joining the call here and taking some time out of your busy day. I guess my first question is, first impressions, how's it been so far in your first 10 days?
Well, I want to kind of mirror things that Jim has said in terms of Weston is an incredibly welcoming community. And in addition to people's sort of warmth and hospitality, there's also a level of dedication and professionalism and energy that make the Weston schools incredibly unique. And I think I said it in one of my newsletters that I think any parent in the universe would want their students to be able to attend schools like Weston. So you are indeed fortunate here. I also am intrigued by Weston's size. I think that brings a special element and a feeling to the campus and to the buildings and the teachers and the students. That's a new learning curve for me, and it's quite appealing. So it's another thing that makes Weston special. In terms of the safety piece, I was also welcomed by Captain Joe Michelli. Thank you for being on the call. He was one of the first, that I met last week and spoke at length about the true partnership that exists between the police department and the school district in all sorts of, settings, layers, ages of kids, different staffing levels, events, etc. There's a wide range. Kind of obviously the school district is the center of life during the week, during the day for all our youth. And Joe also went on to say, and I have found it myself, that when it comes to looking at situations, many times sparked by student behavior, and there needs to be some sort of an investigation done, that Captain Michelli and myself included are very impressed with the seriousness with which the staff approach those situations, how thorough they are, how careful they are, and how thoughtful they are. It doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that it's smooth every time. It doesn't mean that, we can't go back and say, well, maybe we should rethink this step a little bit, all of that. But I think these are people looking, the staff is always looking to improve. And there's typically kind of a debrief mindset, which says after something happens, how do we go back and look at it? And where can we tweak it for next time, or what did we learn that would help us out moving forward? And that's not only in the safety and security piece, it's everywhere. Like, how do I teach that math lesson better? How do I, find a better book, whatever. There's that continuous improvement. And I think it was you, Mike, that mentioned the, how do we go from good to great? And there is that energy here to go from good to great. I also met yesterday with area superintendents from Fairfield County districts. And one of the topics, and again, among many, and it didn't take up, it wasn't the major focus, but, sort of check-ins about safety and security measures and, which systems, which tools, which this, which that. And I just want to reassure this committee that Weston is right in there, with the group. We are not behind, we are not lacking, we are well resourced. And of course, your physical setting of a, one campus situation with the police department right next door, could not be more ideal from sort of a larger, if you're going to put a school system somewhere, well, let's put a small one right next to a police department. That would be the safest. So, you're starting from, a great spot. So again, the partnership and the staffing level is great. And moving forward, I think, this meeting has been an example of, how do we monitor, how do we train, how do we communicate, what other resources do we need? And if we're constantly asking those questions, and again, not just in this committee, but on, in all settings, that's again, a tribute to the district. So I have been incredibly impressed and really glad, to be able to join the district. I know I'm here for about, in the school life, about, maybe 5 minutes or so, as you move forward. But I'm glad to be able to help with the transition. And I am, sort of taking notes on lots of different issues, but one of which is kind of like, okay, what could I tell the new superintendent coming in, who will be the permanent appointment? And it would be, so there'll be a note on, here's where I think safety and security is. And, you guys get thumbs up for sure. But, I just wanted to sort of be able to kind of give a bird's eye view to the new person as he or she comes in, and just be able to say, here's some things to continue, here's some things that, and just sort of give a, a rough status report to the new person as he or she comes in. So I don't know if there's any other questions or anything that I can actually add at this point, but those are my insights to date.
No, that's great to hear. Any questions from anyone else for Deb? I think, look, we're all excited that you're here, Deb. I know it's, again, not the easiest position, but I think you're transitioning pretty well. Everyone that I've spoken to has just, raved about you. So we really appreciate it. And anything from anyone else here for Deb, David, Steve, anyone, Jim, Joe? All right. If not, we can move on. Deb, thank you for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it. Just moving on quickly. I know we're coming up on time here. Just quickly reviewing next items on the agenda, discussion of future meeting topics, the capital budget. We're not going to go over that today, of course. We'll see what happens at the ATBM and maybe circle back to that next month. Outstanding safety and security topics, as well as trends. I think Jim's going to keep us apprised of those sort of as we go forward. And so moving on here, the next scheduled meeting of the committee is going to be on Tuesday, May 13th at 8:30 for everyone. So put that on your calendars. Other than that, if there are no other comments or questions, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Nothing else from me, so I so moved to adjourn.
Second? Steve, are you there?
Sorry, second.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. We'll see you next month.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Okay.
bye.
Bye.